Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's video. Today, I have a very, very special guest, Julie Fox. We've been working on and off together for a while now. I think maybe 2 or 3 years. This was actually, if my memory doesn't fail me, about pre-pandemic that we started talking. And Julie brings a lot of knowledge with on the ground experience. Not only she has moved from her home country, she'll tell you all about it, to Portugal, but she also helps people navigate the Portuguese landscape and understand what to see, where to go, and all that good stuff. So if you're interested in Portugal and you want to learn firsthand what she did and how she did it and how she can help, you're in the right place. So welcome, Julie. It's great to have you on.
Thank you, Deborah. It's a pleasure. Always good to talk to you.
Yes, I was thinking back when we first connected, and it was like maybe 3 or 4 years ago. It's amazing how time flies. We're incredible. So I like to start these conversations in a kind of fun way. So I'd love to know, and I'd love to hear from you, something that people might not expect about you or not know about you, something fun or different that you could share about yourself.
Well, I don't know if it's fun particularly, but I think a lot of people, because I'm British, so a lot of people think that I just moved straight from the UK to Portugal, but actually I didn't. I've lived in lots of different countries before now. And so I didn't spend like years and sort of agonizing over which country to sort of relocate to for my forever home. And I wouldn't advise doing this, but the way I ended up in Portugal was kind of by accident, really. I had been living in Venezuela and teaching English, and I really wasn't comfortable there for lots of reasons. And I wanted to be closer to my family and in Europe, but not in the UK. And so I just started applying for jobs in Spain and Portugal. I got offered one in Coimbra. And so I took it, and that was that, really. And so that's how I moved to Portugal, really, just a job offer, without any serious research at all, which is exactly the opposite from what we both recommend doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I was a lot younger then, and it kind of it didn't need to be, there wasn't so much riding on it. I was on my own. I could move again if I needed to. Yeah.
That's funny. When was that, Julie?
That was 2007. And I had been to Portugal once before. I'd been to Lisbon on a training course for 1 week, and I'd had one free day to go and explore the whole of Lisbon. But I'd never been to Coimbra. I had no idea what it was going to be like. So yeah, I just turned up. And actually the first day, well, the overwhelming sense of what I remember is just feeling safe, just walking around. And that was something I hadn't really had for sort of a good couple of years. Yeah.
How interesting. Well, we all have our own journey. And as you said, sometimes in different phases of our lives, we're more risk prone or risk averse because there's more on the line or less on the line. So absolutely. That's a great story. And I didn't know that. We had never talked about that. That's funny. So I'd love to know about your experience. You've been here quite a while. So how was your experience as foreigner, an expat, an immigrant? I use all these terms because I think for me, they mean more or less the same thing. And what are the mistakes that, well, if you want to share anything that you made and you would do differently, or that you see other people in a similar situation moving to Portugal make, and that you see them make perhaps even the same mistakes you did?
I would say for me, I was actually very lucky because I moved with a job. They helped me with, doing all the paperwork, getting my residency certificates, my NIF, my everything. And they even helped me find my rental accommodation. So I didn't have to go through all of that stuff on my own. And then I met the man who is now my husband at work, and he had already bought a house. So again, I didn't do that. So I kind of had it easy, really. But what I do see is people kind of, and it amazes me how people just even buy a property without coming here. I'm like, what? I know I took a risk, but I could have, it wasn't that big a risk, I don't think, not financially. Because what I do know, especially from living in the countryside, is it can take absolutely years to sell a property. So if you find that your dream home is not quite so dreamy, that you haven't really banked on it being absolutely freezing in the winter, or a bit too rainy for your liking, or a bit too isolated, without the transport that you need, or your needs have changed and you need to be closer to a city. I'm talking more about sort of rural living here than city living, perhaps. But, if you've sunk all your money into a property that you can't sell, you're kind of stuck. Or I see people coming and they're like that. There's a big kind of dream or romantic idea in the UK, at least, that you buy a ruin, you do it up, and it's like your dream home. But again, that is fraught with difficulties and stress, because finding a decent contractor here is like finding a unicorn. And getting people to do work, even if you've found someone, getting them to do it on time is another major issue. And then the cost of construction materials and stuff has gone through the roof as well. So I find that the stories I've heard from people who have done reconstruction projects is it's always cost at least twice what they've been told. And it's just been a really, really stressful experience. So think twice.
Okay. So is that your advice? Think twice. Anything else you would like to share to make people's journey, easier and smoother?
I'd say, sort of rent before you buy.
Okay.
And I'd say do your research. I'd highly recommend doing your scouting trip course, even if you're coming, because I get a lot of clients. I help people plan their trips, and it's my main focus is leisure travel. And so, I've traveled the length and breadth of Portugal. I've been to most towns and villages. Well, I've been to most towns. There's like thousands of villages. I haven't been to all of those. But, I can sort of like give people a sense of what different places are like, and what there is to do there. But of course, living there is an entirely different matter. And when people come and visit, they go to the historical centre. It all looks pretty, all the great old buildings. But when you actually move, even if you move to a small town, you're likely to be in a kind of modern residential area if you're living in an apartment. And the older buildings come with their own set of problems anyway. So for lots of reasons, I can see why Portuguese families choose the more modern constructions. There's a lot to be said for that. But yeah, so I get inquiries from people and clients who are trying to put together a scouting trip itinerary, but they also want to go and see all the sites. And you can't really do both properly. You can combine both on a trip, but you have to be very clear about what you want from it. And so that, and as I say, I often recommend your course, because I think if people have done the soul searching beforehand, to understand themselves and what they are looking for from a potential place to live, and what they're hoping to get out of a trip to Portugal. And it may just be to get a feel for the place, and that's fine, and to kind of see some of the sites and everything. But if it's a proper, I need to decide where to live, you need to approach that in a whole different way. So yeah, and costs as well. I'd say that one of the things that you asked about misconceptions earlier, there's two things: costs and distances. Portugal isn't, I suppose everything's relative, but it isn't that cheap anymore to travel. Hotels have gone like through the roof recently in the last couple of years, and house prices have also shot up. So it's, whilst salaries are still low, it's not a cheap place to live. You can't just kind of come here with €1,000 a month and expect to have a comfortable living as an expat. I don't think. You're going to be struggling if that's all you've got. But and distances between places. I see, people with itineraries, they're trying to see the whole of Portugal in 10 days.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's just not doable.
Yeah.
Especially if you're on a scouting trip, when you need to be kind of spending a bit more time getting away from the major sites, and also doing a little bit of a look around some of the residential areas, to see whether this is a suitable place, town or city for you. You need to give yourselves a bit more time, and so really sort of work out how long it's going to take you to get between places, how you're actually going to do that, because the transport system is patchy. It's good in places but non-existent in others. So yeah, those are my
those are great tips. And also I like to think of the way people can use the course and your services, and we'll talk about I would like to ask you to share about what you do and how you help. Is that the course that I provide gives structure. It's kind of like, imagine a sandwich. So okay, it's a double decker. It's a, what type of sandwich do you want? What type of trip do you want? And then you come up with the fillings with the content. So I think it's a good combination in that sense. And on that note, how do you help people? Share with us, if people are watching until now and there's like, oh, I want to know what Julie does and how she can help me.
Okay, so what I've got a blog that I've had for the last 12 years or something, and over that time I've written about my experiences of living and traveling in Portugal. So I've written about a lot of destinations, so that can be a kind of useful starting point for some of your research. But in terms of one-to-one support, I offer a quick query consultation, which is I think, especially for people coming on a scouting trip, it can be very helpful. I can guide you towards towns and destinations that fit your criteria. It's really helpful if you've thought through what your criteria are beforehand, because otherwise we've got the whole of the country to play with, and it's there's too much choice there. So I help people kind of plan an itinerary that helps them get to the places that are of most interest to them based on their criteria. And if they are interested in doing some sightseeing and some tours, I can help them with suggested places to visit, possible tour guides, and the logistics as well. I won't do the booking, but I can tell you sort of whether it's going to be feasible to take the train from A to B, or whether really you need a car or a driver. But realistically, for a scouting trip, a driver's not usually the best option. It's much better to have a car, I think, unless you're in cities where you can take trains and stuff. Yeah, and I mean, if you are just coming on more of a holiday, I do also have some itineraries that can be booked through my partner travel agency, and I can also design an itinerary as well. And we can combine a little bit of that with some kind of scouting. So it's possible, but it depends how long you're here for, what your budget is, and what you need.
Awesome. So ideally, reach out to Julie. If I will include in the description box all her details, the links, So you can reach out to Julie directly. And if the scouting trip is on the cards, and we partner with this, I highly recommend using her link to book the course. So you have the structure, and there are two courses actually: how to decide where to live and how to prepare a scouting trip. You can use Julie's link to do that, and then talk to Julie with already, the right mindset and with a structured approach, because then both your times will be much more effective and productive. So amazing. Thank you so much, Julie, for being here. This was an immense pleasure and long due. I wish it's great that we got a chance to do this. Thank you so much. For everyone else watching, thank you for sticking until the end. I hope this was useful. And if you have any comments, just comment below. Again, reach out. All the relevant links are in the description box or in the comments. And I will see you next week. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.